The winter of 1547 was bitter and cold. Whitehall Palace, usually alive with banquets and music, echoed with a heavier sound, whispers, footsteps, and the steady groan of a dying king. Behind the gilded doors of his chamber lay Henry VIII, once the most powerful monarch in all of Europe. Once tall, handsome, and athletic, he was now a bloated giant of pain and sickness. His courtiers stood in silence, watching the decline of a man who had changed the very soul of England. The man who had broken from the Catholic Church, executed queens, and declared himself head of the Church of England, was nearing his end. But when death finally claimed him on January 28, 1547, a mystery was born. What truly killed Henry VIII? When Henry first ascended the throne in 1509 at just 17 years old, England rejoiced. He was everything a king should be, tall, broad-shouldered, and strikingly handsome. He loved music, poetry, hunting, and jousting. He could speak multiple languages, play several instruments, and outmatch most men in sport. Foreign ambassadors wrote of his charm and charisma. England believed it had a golden king who would usher in an age of glory. But the reign of Henry VIII was not to be remembered for charm or poetry. Instead, it became one of the most turbulent in English history. 6 marriages, 2 executed queens, friends and advisors who lost their heads on the scaffold. The English Reformation, which tore the country away from Rome and set it on a dangerous new path. By the 1540s, the Golden King had transformed into something darker, tyrannical, suspicious, violent, and cruel. And his body, like his reign, was crumbling. The turning point came in 1536. Henry, then in his mid-40s, suffered a terrible jousting accident. His horse fell, crushing him. He lay unconscious for hours, and though he recovered, he was never the same. The wound to his leg became a permanent ulcer, oozing, painful, and foul-smelling. Courtiers wrote that the stench followed him wherever he went. The infection refused to heal, and the once athletic king could no longer ride or joust. As his mobility declined, his body grew heavier. By his final years, Henry weighed nearly 400 pounds. He could barely walk and had to be carried in a mechanical chair through the palace halls. Alongside his physical decline came rages and mood swings. He became paranoid, cruel, and unpredictable. Even his closest advisors lived in constant fear, knowing that a single wrong word could lead them to the executioner's block. By the mid-1540s, the once golden king was a swollen shadow of himself, sick, bitter, and feared more than loved. In January 1547, Henry fell gravely ill at Whitehall Palace. Witnesses described his body as grotesquely swollen, his face purple, his breathing labored. He could barely speak, and courtiers were forbidden from mentioning the word death in his presence. According to Tudor custom, a dying king was expected to confess his sins and prepare for the afterlife. But Henry, stubborn as always, refused to acknowledge his end. His chaplains hesitated to raise the subject, until Sir Anthony Denny, one of his most trusted men, finally told him the truth. "Your Majesty, you are not likely to live long." Henry at last asked for prayers and received communion. His last words, according to legend, were whispered prayers for mercy. Some claim he murmured, "Monks, monks, monks," a strange phrase, perhaps a haunted memory of the monasteries he destroyed during the Reformation. On the night of January 28, Henry VIII died. He was 55 years old. Even in death, Henry VIII left no clear answers. His physicians recorded no cause. Chroniclers described only a body ruined by disease. And so, the debate began, a debate that continues even today. The simplest explanation is that Henry's body simply gave out. By the 1540s, he was morbidly obese. His legs were ulcerated and infected. His heart, struggling under his massive weight, likely collapsed. Modern doctors suggest congestive heart failure, a condition where the heart can no longer pump effectively. His shortness of breath, swelling, and fatigue all match. Others believe Henry suffered from type 2 diabetes. His excessive weight, constant thirst, slow-healing wounds, and mood swings fit the pattern. Diabetes, untreated, would have weakened his body until even a minor infection could prove fatal. Perhaps the most convincing theory is blood poisoning. For over a decade, Henry lived with a leg wound that oozed pus and refused to heal. Infection would have spread into his bloodstream, causing sepsis, a deadly condition that fits the symptoms of fever, swelling, and sudden decline. Some medical historians have argued that Henry suffered from Cushing's syndrome, a hormonal disorder caused by excess cortisol. Symptoms include obesity, mood swings, infertility, and muscle weakness, all of which plagued Henry. Could this hidden illness explain both his physical and mental decline? And then there are darker whispers. Henry had created countless enemies, nobles he executed, wives he discarded, and foreign powers he defied. Could one of them have hastened his end? Poison was not uncommon in Tudor courts. Some suggest his rapid decline points to foul play, but no proof has ever surfaced. If Henry was murdered, the secret died with those who stood at his bedside. When Henry died, his death was kept secret for 3 days, fearing unrest if the people knew their king was gone. Meanwhile, his body began to decompose rapidly. Chroniclers recorded that his coffin leaked, and dogs were seen licking at the liquid. To some, it was divine punishment for his cruelty. His son, Edward VI, only 9 years old, became king. But the boy was frail and sickly, and Henry's Grand Tudor dynasty soon teetered on collapse. Within a decade, Edward was dead and the throne passed to Mary, then Elizabeth, Henry's daughters by different queens. Henry VIII's death was not just the end of a king, it was the beginning of a fragile new era. So what killed Henry VIII? Was it the slow destruction of his body through obesity, diabetes, and heart failure? Was it infection, sepsis, or a hidden hormonal disorder? Or was it something more sinister, an enemy's hand, a poisoned cup, a final act of revenge? We may never know the truth. The records are too vague, the science of the time too limited. What remains is not an answer, but a shadow, a mystery as heavy as the crown Henry wore. Henry VIII changed England forever. He broke with Rome, created the Church of England, dissolved the monasteries, and set the nation on a path toward Protestantism. His 6 marriages shaped dynastic politics for decades. His cruelty left scars, but his will reshaped the monarchy. Yet in the end he could not conquer death. The mighty king who ruled with fire and fear was reduced to a sick, swollen man, gasping for breath in the cold of January. His death was mysterious, his legacy divisive, but one truth remains. Henry VIII was a man who embodied both greatness and terror, whose life and death continue to fascinate the world nearly 5 centuries later. The mystery of Henry VIII's death is more than a medical puzzle. It is the final chapter of a life written in ambition, blood, and power. A king who reigned like a god but died like a man. And perhaps that is the greatest truth of all, that no matter how powerful, how feared, or how remembered, death comes for every king.